The following video contains major spoilers for the series of Terrifier, but mainly Terrifier 2. Most of the gore has been intentionally left out of this video for those interested in the world of Terrifier, but are not comfortable with the excessive amounts of gore within it. Also to keep this video from being classed as unsuitable for audiences. Personal thanks to Morsauce, I hope I came close to saying that right, for allowing me to use their fan-made Terrifier trailer for the opening of this video. And Savage D for their use of the custom Dead by Daylight Terrifier tracks. Both of them make great Dead by Daylight trailers and Dead by Daylight music. And if you're interested in seeing more from either of them, links to both their channel and the content used in the description below. So bringing Art into the game is a bit of a challenge, since he is one of those few rare killers where he's actually just basically an average human. He's not very fast, he's not very strong, he's kinda smart, and he has no magical abilities to use besides being able to regenerate injured body parts and prolonging the life of his victims and himself during deathly encounters. Both of those seem incredibly difficult to find a way to adapt into a power, while still feeling like Art, so let's count them out. So instead of the abilities Art possesses, I chose to look at his personality and the way he kills his victims. And a trend that shows up is Art's goal of making each kill somewhat different than the last, if he can help it. He takes joy in changing up his tools of torment. He creates makeshift weaponry out of simple everyday items, not only for lethality, but scare factor. He will use any weapon he can get his hands on, but with a little bit of prep time will come in with something special. Art has a lot of variety in the weapons he uses to unleash kills, in various and even impractical ways, because he's doing it just to amuse himself. He's all about the journey, not the destination. And of course, Art is nothing much without his demonic companion, who acts like a support tool for Art, helping him to be able to fulfill any plan or resurrection he may need. So it felt important to show her off in some way. So what kind of power does that bring us to? 1. Art needs variety in the way he downs and injures survivors, inflicting different types of damages and status effects to make every encounter as unique as possible. 2. Every weapon or tool he uses cannot be relied upon exclusively, just because it's the best. If Art isn't constantly changing his tactics and weapons, he's gonna get bored. Art doesn't sweat, he plays for laughs, but only enough that he's still standing alive at the end of it. 3. While Art is doing this for fun, he can recognize when a situation is too far out of control for him to handle, and will make use of his backup plan, which is a powerful tool, but overpowered, which is why he tries his best not to use it unless he absolutely needs to. 4. He needs to make use of his demonic guardian, one who doesn't harm the survivors but merely enables Art in whatever plan he needs to get done. Introducing Art's primary killer power, Pile of Punchline. Pile of Punchlines gives Art the unique ability to switch his killer weapon from a select many, with various different effects to injure or hinder survivors all mid-match, selecting which tools he prefers for any situation he may find a survivor in, while leaving the rest he can't carry in his bag of goodies, held by his helper, the little pale girl. Art appreciates variety when it comes to killing, or he will get bored, and being bored will cause Art to not truly have his heart in it, causing his weapons to lose their full utility. As Art uses his weapons during the trial, they will slowly fill with boredom. If a weapon completely fills with boredom, they will still be usable, but will be a significantly weaker version of itself, until they are refreshed at Art's goodie bag, but we will talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about Art's primary weapons. Art gets a total of 4 primary weapons to pick from during a trial, that can be switched out at his goodie bag at any time, but only 2 primary weapons can be held at any given time. So let's talk about these primary weapons. First, we have the table leg. The table leg can destroy downed pallets and breakable walls if they make contact with the table leg. This comes at a cost, as breaking pallets and walls earns 25% more boredom than a regular injury would apply. When Art becomes fully bored of the table leg, it completely removes the ability to break pallets and walls. The whip. The whip swings in a wide arc side to side that can hit multiple survivors at once, applying a temporary but long-lasting hindered effect to every survivor hit by it. Each hit of the whip applies a stack of 2% hindered, which lasts for a total of 60 seconds. When a survivor is hit again, they will gain another stack of hindered, causing their timer to also reset. The survivors can only have 4 stacks of hindered at any given time, equaling a total of 8% hinder. Any further whip hits will only reapply the timer. When Art becomes fully bored of the whip, it completely removes the whip's ability to apply any more hindered effects, or refresh the timer. The saw. After a survivor is hit with the saw, they are afflicted with deep wounds and a new status effect called seeping. Seeping will leave full and constant blood trails on the ground for twice as long as usual, making the ability to track injured survivors that much more easy. When Art becomes bored of the saw, it completely removes the ability to apply deep wounds, but will still retain the ability to apply seeping. The scalpel. While the scalpel is equipped, Art's terror radius is lowered to 18 meters. His vaulting speed is also set to 1.275 seconds, the same as Tier 3 Myers. This also lowers the stun duration to 1.5 seconds, and the hit cooldown is reduced to 2.3 seconds. When Art becomes fully bored of the scalpel, it completely removes every passive effect besides the terror radius reduction. And here is a little information for anyone scared of perk combinations with the scalpel. While these weapons will be Art's primary source of dealing with survivors, they won't be the only tools Art can utilize. He also brings in some special weaponry. Special weapons. Art gets the choice between 2 special weapons, one of which he can carry while the other can be switched out at the goodie bag at any time. His first choice of special weapon is the syringe. Survivors injected with Art's syringe have their perception of reality altered. Once a survivor is injected with the syringe, survivors will see false Arts wandering the trial, acting in various different ways, from running, making mocking gestures, and running towards a survivor. If a survivor happens to make contact with a false Art, they will scream out in terror. The syringe effects stay in the survivor's system for 90 seconds. When Art becomes bored of the syringe, it completely removes the illusion effects and will only damage survivors. Art's other choice of special weapon is the flamethrower. The flamethrower will shoot out a short burst of fire forward in a cone shape, coating all interactables with flames. Fire-coated objects burn for 30 seconds, igniting any survivor who happens to come in contact with it. Pallets and breakable walls that are ignited will break automatically after 3 seconds. If a survivor happens to be hit by a flamethrower's flames directly, they will lose a health state and become ignited. A survivor has 30 seconds to put out their flames or have a fellow survivor help snuff their flames before they become singed. When a survivor becomes singed, while in the healthy state, they become injured and broken for 60 seconds. This effect only applies broken if the survivor is already injured. Ignited survivors need to snuff out the flames in a single animation. If the action is let go for any reason, it resets back to 0. A survivor snuffing themselves will take 8 seconds, while a snuff by a fellow survivor will only take 4. When Art becomes bored of the flamethrower, it runs out of fuel and is no longer able to throw any fire, but will still be able to manually hit survivors. And the last category of Art's choosable weapons is that of the ranged weapons, which he has 2 options to pick from. Ranged weapons. First off, we have the meat cleaver, which can be readied and tossed similar to the Huntress's hatchet, but in a single shot throwable that needs to be drenched in survivor's blood before being able to be thrown. Meaning a survivor needs to be injured or downed with the meat cleaver to enable the weapon to be thrown. The cleaver can be picked up off the ground after being thrown, or will automatically be refreshed when interacting with the goodie bag. Cleavers will stay bloody permanently once it has hit a survivor, unless it is destroyed or refreshed at a goodie bag while it is out of Art's inventory. Survivors can choose to stomp on a discarded meat cleaver, breaking it, forcing Art to replenish at the goodie bag to get a new one. There is no boredom with ranged weapons as they can be lost rather easily. Art's second ranged weapon is the bottle. The bottle can be tossed, immediately injuring any survivor hit, but will always shatter on impact, leaving behind a pile of glass for 30 seconds. Survivors that walk through broken glass will have their movement speed slowed and scream out in pain, alerting Art to their location. Art does have one final weapon, but it comes with a condition that will be better explained a little later on. So let's wrap up how weapon selection and changing works. Everything will work on a radial wheel, similar to Vecna. Art can pull up his radial wheel and pick whatever weapon he chooses at any time. But unlike Vecna, weapons are not switched to immediately. When a new weapon is being pulled out by Art, his movement speed is reduced to 4.0 meters a second, or 100% movement speed, aka the same movement speed as a survivor, but won't be able to do any action besides move for 2 seconds, while the weapon is switching hands. The last portion of Art's power involves his goodie bag, the little pale girl, and how survivors can test their luck to hinder Art's plans. The little pale girl is Art's sidekick, assisting him by keeping hold of any of his weapons he may need later in the trial. The little pale girl can be found wandering around the trial, holding Art's goodie bag. Art's goodie bag is the resource he uses to not only switch to weapons he may prefer to use later in the match, but to remove boredom from his weapons and refresh any missing ranged weapons. The little pale girl will wander around the trial, highlighted in white to Art. Art can choose whether to have the little pale girl wander the trial or keep her close by having her follow after Art. If the little pale girl is allowed to wander the trial herself, she will detect any survivor who comes within 8 meters of her at any time. She can trick the survivors into coming closer by imitating the voices of fellow injured survivors. Survivors are able to tell when they are being detected on Killer Instinct because of the little pale girl waving and smiling at them. If the little pale girl is set to follow Art, she will no longer be able to detect survivors using Killer Instinct, but will still imitate injured survivors. Survivors are able to prevent Art from refreshing his weapons. Survivors can choose to approach the little pale girl and rip the goodie bag out of her hands. While in possession of Art's goodie bag, survivors can choose to drop it whenever they will, but will be hindered by 10% movement speed while currently holding it. It would be best for survivors not to get too greedy in preventing Art from touching up his weapons, as whenever a survivor is in possession of the goodie bag, Art will gain Seriousness, which works similar to Boredom in his weapon wheel, but when fully charged makes Art become serious and gain access to his backup pistol. Art only gets one shot of his backup pistol after firing and is stopped completely in his tracks playing with the now unloaded gun for 3 seconds. The pistol is very much a dangerous weapon. If a survivor gets shot with Art's pistol, they are automatically placed into the dying state. After Art uses his pistol, all of Art's seriousness is removed, setting the pistol back to 0, unable to be used until fully filling up again. Plus side though, if survivors are not in possession of Art's goodie bag, his seriousness will slowly drain. 3 times as slow as it is gained, but it will drain back to 0. So it is up to the survivor's judgment to pick good moments to hide Art's goodie bag or pay the price of getting Art serious. After a survivor drops the goodie bag, the little pale girl will path towards it, where she will be highlighted in yellow until she can pick up Art's goodie bag again. Art will be unable to see where his goodie bag was dropped by the survivors, but can look towards where the little pale girl happens to be wandering towards. And that brings us to the end of Art's power, so let's talk about the add-ons he brings into the trial to help him assist his crowd work. Dead Opossum. The little pale girl's detection range is increased to 12 meters. Party Horn. Boredom is drained 15% slower. Wadded Up Cache. Boredom drains from weapons 25% faster than usual. Face Full of Potatoes. Hitting a survivor with a scalpel will reveal their aura for 6 seconds. Clown Cafe Mural. Art's terror radius with a syringe is reduced by 6 meters. Honking Horn. Survivors injected with the syringe suffer from the Oblivious Stas effect. Plastic Wrap. Art becomes serious 15% faster. Goofy glasses. Syringe-created arts are more likely to chase afflicted survivors. Mortician's eye. Survivors injected with the syringe suffer from the blindness status effect. Jar of acid. Survivors become singed 30% faster. Dinner bell. The little pale girl's movement speed is increased by 100%. Car crash headline. Remove the extra boredom consumed from breaking pallets and breakable walls with the table leg. Mother's scalp. Reduce the time spent to switch between weapons by 0.5 seconds. Child's bicycle. Boredom is gained 25% slower. Salt and bleach. Increase the whip's hindered penalty to 3%. Maximum hindered penalty is now set to 6%. Art's portrait. Meat cleaver will always be bloodied on refresh from the goodie bag. Improvised candy bowl. Survivors holding the goodie bag are exposed and hindered by 10%. The exposed status effect lasts 10 seconds after dropping the goodie bag. Vicky plus Art. Art can carry 2 meat cleavers. Art Crispies. If Art becomes bored of all of his currently equipped weapons, he becomes serious. On refresh at a goodie bag, Art now gains 25% less boredom on all weapons. All Hallows Eve VHS. Art gains seriousness through stuns and blinds. Goodie bag no longer gives Art any seriousness while stolen by survivors. Art comes into the trial with 3 new perks. Revel in the pain and blood of any survivor who catches his attention, with a sprinkle of hope to make their failure that much more humorous. Something about feeling that blood under your boot gets you giddy. Bloody breadcrumbs. When the killer walks over the survivor's blood pool, they gain the undetectable status effect and a 3% haste for 3 seconds. Channel your demonic power to draw out the survivor's suffering longer than naturally possible. Hex hemophilia. Each time a survivor becomes injured while Hex hemophilia is active, receive a token up to a maximum of 5 tokens. For every token of Hex hemophilia, reduce global healing speed by 10%. It's always the most amusing when the prey fights back. Let them get their shot in and it'll make the kill that much sweeter. Introducing a new perk type known as Duel of Pity. Challenge a survivor to see if they have what it takes to best you and claim their prize. If not, the rewards are yours for the reaping. Duel of Pity. Humorous Hunt. After injuring a survivor with a basic attack, during the hit cooldown animation, the killer can press the action button to activate Duel of Pity. During a duel, stuns and blinds on the killer are doubled in duration. If the survivor is placed into the dying state without chase being broken, all survivors in the trial become exposed for 60 seconds. If chase is broken by any means by the challenged survivor, they are fully healed, ignoring any status effects and gaining the endurance status effect for 10 seconds. Duel of Pity goes on a cooldown of 120 seconds after being failed or succeeding. Both the killer and survivor are surrounded in particle effects with a symbol underneath to show that they are participating in a duel. After a duel is activated, the killer has a 10-second grace period to enter chase with the challenged survivor, or the effect expires and the duel is considered a loss. And that is the end of everything regarding Art. But we're not done. Not even close. As much as Art is an iconic horror character, the survivor who would be brought in alongside him is also just as interesting. At least as much as a survivor can be compared to their slasher counterpart. Now let's talk about my favorite final girl. Sienna Shaw, Terrifier 2's final girl, an artistic and possibly autistic teen with a passion for costume design, which results in one of the best final girl outfits in horror history, especially how accurately it represents the character of Sienna throughout the movie. If Art the Clown is the perfect representation of what a Dead by Daylight killer is, Sienna is the perfect example of what it means to be a Dead by Daylight survivor, figuratively overflowing with emotions, fear and anxiety being a constant state of existence. Those emotions specifically almost paralyzing in their intensity. But when it really comes down to it and the situation is at its absolute most dire, is able to face those fears and physical pains unwavering, taking charge and fighting to keep those around her safe, to stand as an unshakable guardian willing to fight off any threat trying to get to someone she is shielding. In those moments, all the what-ifs are tossed aside in exchange for action. She is a survivor, leading with her heart, a perfect meal for the entity to siphon from, who will not only supply a satisfying amount of sustenance herself, but will also recklessly push the killers to a place of frustration and aggression most other survivors can't. Sienna comes into the trial with 3 perks to aid her when the situation is at its absolute most dire, to not only watch over the survivors, but keep herself in the fight to ensure their safety as long as possible. Sometimes it's best to take it slow and save your energy. A time will come when you'll need it, and then you will be more than ready. Terminal lucidity. After 60 seconds of total walk time while injured, terminal lucidity becomes active. The next time you become exhausted, recover from the exhaustion status effect even while running 100% faster. Even on the brink of death, you know it's do or die. Save your ally or let them be sacrificed. To you, the answer is always obvious. Selfless assault. After rescuing a survivor from the killer's grasp while injured, selfless assault becomes active. While behind a killer in the injured state, hit the action button to shove the killer, stunning them for 3 seconds. Selfless assault then deactivates permanently. Something or someone is watching over you, keeping even the most gruesome of wounds from staying that way for very long. Invocation Divine Intervention. After performing a 60-second invocation in the basement, the survivor will always be broken while in the injured or dying state. 90 seconds after first entering either state, the survivor will heal for 1 health state. Survivors with active Divine Intervention will permanently have their action speed reduced by 15%. This includes repairs, healing, totems, sabotaging, and opening chests. And that was the Terrifier chapter. I know there's a lot of moving parts to it, but I think the kind of power this is, it kind of needs to have a lot going on with it for the idea to actually flourish and not just fall flat. Where if it was, oh, you get to choose between 3 different weapons, whoopee, it just wouldn't do justice to the idea, the fantasy of having multiple weapons to choose from to switch up mid-match, to change how you're playing and change how you approach the situation. And I think it works well because it can be a simple pick up this killer and just use the M1 abilities because they're slightly better than they normally are, and you'll still get some good value out of it. It's not difficult to just use whatever weapons you have, but it also has a lot you can sink your teeth into to figuring out how to properly combo your weapons together, making interesting builds around these different types of weapons and styles that this kind of power would be able to promote that others couldn't. But also the beauty of the power is the way I made it is that if it is too much, if you can't do all of it, if it just is too bloated, even with testing, right, whatever, it is easily restructured and taken down. You can remove 1 or 2 weapons, reshape the categories, and it doesn't effectively change the power too much. Adjust a little bit of powers here or there. Ultimately, the power is easily readjusted to be more flexible and fitting in for the role of killer. So I know I went a little extra and there's a lot going on here. I would have rather had more ideas than less ideas. Because ultimately, what wouldn't work, you can just remove, and what does work, you can keep. I would rather have many options to choose from than fewer options to choose from. I think it could work as is, but I could totally see it being too much, so easily adjustable if it comes down to it. I don't plan on developing any more killer powers to quite this degree, to this amount of detail and just a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm intentionally trying to keep powers a little bit more simple and straightforward, unless it really calls for something, but ultimately this is going to be the last overly big killer power to at least this degree. Which brings me to my final point, because for the first time, I'm going to let you, the viewers, pick the next chapter I release, or killer, whatever. I have 4 that I'm pretty close to being finished on, that I feel confident if they're picked, I could get them done pretty effectively in time. I have like 10 plus extra ones to varying different details, but these are the 4 that I want you to vote on. Down in the comments, leave your choice, write out which one you would want to see, and the one I see the most of in the comments will be the next choice for next month. I'm going to name the chapters and then a little tagline, one simple word to give you a little taste for what might be coming. So the first one we have is Predator with the tagline Thermal. We have House of a Thousand Corpses with Co-op. We have Ghost Rider with Motorcycle, and Carrie with Telekinesis. Write down which one you want to see, and it just might be coming out next month. But anyways, I've taken up enough of your time, so thank you all for watching. My name is Dusteroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye-bye.